The world had always remembered him, Elvis Presley, the king. His voice, his presence, the energy he brought to the stage, these were the things that defined generations. Yet tonight, the world was about to witness something extraordinary, something that walked the fine line between history, imagination, and the possibilities of the future. The stage lay empty, draped in shadows. Dust floated in the soft glow of the overhead spotlights, dancing slowly like memories waiting to be reborn. Every detail of the stage, from the polished microphone stand to the faded curtains, whispered stories of performances past. Yet tonight, they held the promise of a new story, one that would never belong to the king as he was, but to something inspired by him. A figure emerged. White suit, iconic posture, every movement a mirror of the past, yet impossibly different. The crowd, imagined or present in spirit, collectively held its breath. The silhouette approached the microphone slowly, deliberately. Every step seemed to carry decades of history, every gesture a memory rendered in motion. For those watching, a subtle tension grew. It wasn't fear, it wasn't disrespect, it was awe mixed with a question that no one could easily answer. What happens when the essence of a legend is recreated, yet the man himself is absent? The microphone gleamed under the soft spotlight. The figure raised a hand. A heartbeat later, it froze. Silence filled the space. Not the comfortable silence before a song, not the pause before an applause, but a silence so profound it almost spoke for itself. Because this was not a performance in the traditional sense. This was a moment crafted from memory, from digital reconstruction, from the careful work of those who dared to imagine what it might feel like if the voice, the aura, the presence of the king could somehow return. The stage held every detail. The silhouette's white suit reflected a hint of the soft stage lights. The posture was perfect, yet the audience felt the subtle difference. The energy of the original presence was not missing out of disrespect. It was simply impossible to replicate fully. The king had been human, alive, flawed, brilliant, and the recreation, while meticulous, was always one step removed. And yet, in that removed space, there was wonder, there was curiosity, there was a quiet tension that made every observer lean forward. Every eye, imagined or real, focused on the figure. The lights flickered slightly, as if echoing the collective anticipation of decades. Questions began to form, unspoken. How does one measure the return of a legend without claiming to replace him? How much of memory can be transformed into reality before it stops being history and starts being imagination? The figure reached for the microphone again, hands steady, movements elegant. This time, the moment stretched, hanging in space like a painting in motion. Every shadow cast by the lights seemed to whisper stories of concerts long past, of fans screaming, of moments frozen forever in photographs and recordings. And then came the realization. The voice, the very element that had made the king immortal, was not coming from the lips before them. It existed elsewhere, recreated, reconstructed, a tribute rather than the original. AI had given life to the sound, the tone, the cadence, but the soul behind it remained the king, untouchable, perfect, preserved in memory and admiration. The audience, whether imagined or watching through the lens of imagination, felt a profound mix of emotions: reverence, awe, excitement, and the slight unease of witnessing something that should have been impossible. This was not disrespect. This was homage. This was storytelling at the edge of reality, where technology and imagination met in a cinematic performance. Step by step, the figure moved across the stage. Shadows shifted. The light highlighted folds of the suit, the subtle motion of hands, the tiny tremors that suggested life but didn't claim it. Every detail was meticulously crafted to echo the king's presence, to honor his legacy without ever replacing it. In that space, the invisible crowd held its collective breath. They understood instinctively that this was a tribute, that it was a recreation that celebrated the genius of a man who had changed music forever. And they waited, not for a song that would play, but for the tension, the artistry, and the haunting beauty of a legend remembered in new form. And so, the stage became a canvas, the silhouette a brushstroke of memory and imagination. The lights, shadows, and digital whispers painted a scene that was not the king, yet carried him in every nuance. The audience understood, without words, that what they were witnessing was a careful, loving homage, a bridge between the past and the present, between history and the possibilities of the future. This was the start of a story, not a story that replaced the king, not a story that claimed he had returned, but a story that explored what it means to honor greatness, to recreate brilliance, and to imagine a world where the legend of Elvis Presley could live on in new, unexpected ways. And as the figure paused once more at the microphone, the lights flickered in recognition, shadows playing across the stage as if acknowledging that this moment was a tribute. A question lingered in the minds of all who watched. If a voice can be recreated, if a presence can be reconstructed, how much of a legend can the imagination truly hold? The answer, like the king himself, was timeless, revered, respected, unreachable in its perfection, yet celebrated in every detail, every movement, every imagined note. The figure remained poised on the stage. The empty seats, imagined or remembered, seemed to hum with the weight of anticipation. Every detail of the environment, the polished microphone, the faint reflection on the floor, the subtle flicker of stage lights, conspired to create a reality that felt both impossibly familiar and entirely unreal. For a moment, it was easy to forget that this was not the king himself. The posture, the sway, the subtle rhythm of movement, all meticulously captured, echoed decades of performances that had electrified audiences worldwide. Yet there was a quiet difference that lingered in the air, an unspoken signal that this was a recreation, a tribute, homage. Then, a subtle vibration ran through the room, faint but undeniable. It was the AI voice, carefully reconstructed, carefully calibrated. Not the original, not a recording pulled from history, but a voice that could have belonged to him, imagined by the minds who had studied, analyzed, and recreated every nuance. The audience, whether in memory, imagination, or through screens, felt a shiver of recognition. The silhouette raised its head. Eyes, shaded yet expressive, seemed to search the crowd, searching not for applause, but for understanding. Every pause, every breath, every movement was amplified by the tension in the room. The silence before the AI-generated note was almost deafening. And then the sound came. Not a song, not lyrics, not the familiar melodies, but a single note, clear and resonant. It filled the space like a memory reborn, vibrating through the shadows and across the imagined seats. It was beautiful. It was haunting. It was impossible. The audience, invisible yet vivid, leaned in. Some whispered, some froze, some felt tears rise in their eyes. It wasn't nostalgia. It wasn't imitation. It was recognition. Recognition that something extraordinary was unfolding, something that balanced perfectly between reverence and wonder. Yet, within this beauty, a tension grew. Questions formed in every mind. How real is this? How much of the king remains? Can a voice, however perfectly reconstructed, carry the essence of life itself? These questions hovered, unanswered, as the figure moved across the stage, hand brushing the microphone stand with precision and care. Micro cliffhangers punctuated every movement. The AI note would rise, pause, and then vanish, leaving silence in its wake. Shadows deepened across the costume, flickering with every subtle shift of the lights. Every frame seemed to stretch time, forcing the audience to confront the surreal nature of the performance. And then came the moments that defined the night. The silhouette tilted its head, listening. The AI voice responded in perfect tone, a harmonic echo that seemed almost alive. It was not a conversation. It was a dialogue between human memory and artificial reconstruction, a delicate dance that blurred the line between what had been and what could be. The stage seemed to breathe. Every shadow stretched longer. Every reflection in the polished floor deepened. The audience, caught in the spell of anticipation, felt the tension coiling tighter. Every second became a question, every gesture a revelation. The king was present, yet not present. The voice was there, yet not his own. And in that paradox, a story unfolded, an entirely new narrative built on respect, imagination, and the artistry of tribute. The figure paused at center stage. One hand rested lightly on the microphone. The AI-generated voice hummed in a subtle, haunting melody, not a song, but a sound that carried emotion beyond the limits of memory. The pause that followed stretched endlessly. The lights dimmed slightly, casting the white suit into sharper relief against the darkness. Shadows seemed to whisper of performances past, of audiences that had cheered, of moments frozen forever in photographs and recordings. Every microbeat of the AI voice, every silent pause, every subtle motion was a trigger. For those watching, it was impossible to look away. The tension was alive, crawling along the spine, pulling the imagination into a space that was neither fully past nor fully present. And through it all, the king's legacy remained untarnished, untouchable, honored in every carefully designed movement and sound. As the figure moved toward the edge of the stage, another note emerged. It was a soft, haunting resonance, a single tone that seemed to bridge decades, linking memory with imagination. The audience felt it, recognizing instantly that what they heard was not merely sound, but the echo of artistry itself. The figure's head tilted slightly, eyes, shaded yet expressive, scanned the unseen crowd. The pause that followed was electric.
Every observer, real or imagined, understood that this moment was unlike any before it. Not a performance, not a replication, but a living tribute, a story told in shadows, light, and sound. Micro cliffhangers continued to punctuate the experience. Each AI-generated note rose and fell. Each gesture, each flicker of movement demanded attention, held the viewer in suspense. Time itself seemed to stretch, memory and imagination intertwined, history and technology met. And in that space, a realization formed. The tribute was perfect not because it replaced the king, but because it honored him. It did not diminish his legacy. It enhanced it. It reminded the world why Elvis Presley mattered, not just as a performer, but as a phenomenon, a symbol of artistry, passion, and the human spirit. The lights dimmed further, drawing the audience into a quiet, almost sacred space. Every shadow seemed alive, moving in sync with the recreated voice. The king's essence, preserved in memory, inspired the artificial reconstruction. And the paradox was complete. The voice existed, the presence existed, yet the man himself remained untouchable, legendary, immortal. The stage was silent, yet the tension in the air was almost tangible. Every shadow, every flicker of light seemed to pulse with the weight of expectation. The king's silhouette remained at the center, poised yet motionless, a perfect blend of history and imagination. Each second stretched, each moment held suspended in a space where reality and tribute intertwined seamlessly. Then the AI-generated voice returned, soft, haunting, imperfect in its perfection. Not a song, not a melody anyone had ever heard, but a tone, a resonance, a whisper that carried the essence of artistry and emotion. It was a sound that could only exist in this space, a recreation, a reflection, a homage. The audience, whether real, imagined, or watching through memory and imagination, felt the profound beauty of what was unfolding. This was not a performance in the traditional sense. It was not meant to replace the king. It was a bridge between the brilliance of the past and the possibilities of technology, between memory and imagination, between legacy and innovation. Eyes that had never lived stared through the shadows of the stage, calm yet piercing, as if acknowledging the presence of everyone who had ever loved the king. The figure moved gracefully, each step a silent echo of countless performances that had once electrified arenas worldwide. The AI voice responded in subtle harmonics, perfectly timed, perfectly tuned, but carrying none of the life that had made Elvis Presley the legend he was. And yet, it was beautiful. The tension built steadily, each moment more electric than the last. Micro cliffhangers punctuated the scene, the AI note rising, a pause, a gesture, the flicker of lights across the folds of the white suit. Every visual and auditory cue was carefully calibrated to hold attention, to evoke wonder, and to remind the audience that this was a tribute unlike any other. Then came the revelation, not a shocking twist, but a profound understanding. The voice was here, the silhouette was here, the king's legacy was preserved, honored, celebrated. Yet the man himself remained untouchable, immortal, untarnished, perfectly preserved in memory, revered in imagination, forever unchallenged in reality. The figure paused at the microphone once more, the lights dimmed to a soft glow.
The AI voice hummed, a delicate tone that seemed to vibrate through every shadow, across every imagined seat, through every imagined ear. It was not a performance. It was a meditation on legacy, a reflection on memory, a celebration of artistry. Audience members, real or imagined, leaned in. They felt the emotion, the care, the craftsmanship behind every gesture, every note, every pause. They understood instinctively that this was not imitation, it was homage. It was storytelling at the intersection of history, memory, and technology. As the figure moved toward the edge of the stage, shadows stretched long and deep. Every flicker of light seemed to honor the countless performances of the past, the countless fans who had cheered, the countless songs that had defined a generation. And in that stretch of silence, every observer understood the paradox. The king was everywhere and nowhere, alive in imagination, but untouched in reality. Then slowly, almost imperceptibly, the AI voice faded. The silhouette remained, a ghostly presence, a living tribute to the man who had changed music forever. The audience felt the final tension, the final pause. They did not need closure. They understood the message. The legend was eternal, untouchable, celebrated in ways the world could never have imagined. The lights dimmed further, each one extinguishing one by one, leaving only shadows and memory. The figure moved toward the back of the stage, fading into darkness, leaving behind a presence that would linger in thought, in imagination, in memory. Every note, every gesture, every shadow was a testament. This was homage. This was tribute. This was love for a legend that would never fade. And as the final note of AI-generated sound vanished into silence, a single thought remained. Legends cannot be recreated. They can only be remembered, honored, celebrated. What the audience had witnessed was not the king returned. It was something even more profound. The enduring power of artistry, memory, and human imagination, brought to life through careful tribute, cinematic storytelling, and the possibilities of technology. The stage was dark, the king remained immortal, and the story, though finished for now, would echo forever in the minds of all who had watched. It was not a performance. It was a meditation, a celebration, a bridge across time. This wasn't Elvis. It was what comes after him. And yet, in every heartbeat, every shadow, every echo, the king lived on.